Hey everybody, Brian Von VA. We're here to ask you a question. Now, my DM is convinced that Divine Smite is overpowered, and he wants to nerf it. So what do you recommend actually telling him? Leave your recommendations down in the comments below. So the other night we were running a combat instance. We have 5 party members and we're all level 6. First, the barbarian hit one of the enemies, a white, twice, mind you. Then, on my turn, I play a Paladin 5, Warlock 1, and I attacked the white twice and did a first level smite on both hits, mentioning that it gets an extra dice due to the white being undead. Needless to say, it did not survive the attacks. My DM then started freaking out because you can only cast one spell a turn, and said, if it consumes a spell slot, it's a spell. He didn't believe me when I told him that Divine Smite isn't a spell. We then turned to our group's rules expert who pulled out the Player's Handbook and looked up Divine Smite. He pointed out that, as you know, the way I was doing it was correct, and that Divine Smite is usually balanced out by a paladin's limited amount of spell slots. Then the DM started going on about how I was trivializing his encounters, air quotes, and that he doesn't know why he even tries to put an encounter together, more air quotes, and just kept going on and on about how paladins are overpowered in 5th edition and need to be more like paladins in Baldur's Gate. At the end of the session, when we were packing up to go home, he tried to say that he had nothing against me, that it was because whoever made paladins made them too overpowered. By this point, I was just done trying to discuss it with him and went home. So, what do you all think? How should I handle this going into the next session? Because I know he's going to try to come up with some sort of nerf. Ultimately, I'm afraid that he's going to be coming up with some way to just undermine your paladin, but let's see what everyone has to say. Tell them to run more than one encounter per long rest so that the paladin can't Divine Smite every time they make an attack. Well, there's also just accepting the fact that the paladin happens to pump damage to certain enemy types. And the counterbalance is that they have limited spell slots which have an opportunity cost of actually casting spells. Not to mention that most paladin oaths don't have anything in their toolkit to maneuver around the battlefield very well. If a paladin wants to engage something far away, he or she has to dash at it and put himself in a position to take a hit before he can give a hit. Oh, by the way, flying creatures are pretty much a hard counter without assistance. In my opinion, a paladin without smites is just a gimped fighter with few low-level spell slots and a little healing utility. The week after I Nova one-shot my DM's creative time loop mini-boss at the beginning of Loop 2, he put down a pool of water full of deadly creatures between me and my more mobile friends who eagerly ran ahead without me. He then pinned them and slowly killed them off while I was powerless to do anything. He used their strengths against them by luring them into overextending the party. We revived the druid and learned a valuable lesson that day. OP is a function of circumstance, and the DM controls the circumstances. Yeah, when players come up with amazing and creative solutions, it's good fun and should be rewarded. But at the same time, if they're trying to cheese and exploit or abuse just one strategy every fight, it's time to change things up on them. I see a ton of posts on here about people having issues with players destroying their encounters, or gameplay in general, all with some weird strategy they've come up with, often stemming from misunderstandings of rules or effects. And I can't help but think, then do something different? A paladin is all it takes to ruin your encounters? Then you need to look deep within and ask yourself why that is. Without changing any rules or gameplay, what is it that you, as the DM, are not understanding that's making them such a threat? I mean, yes, if it's an undead-heavy setting, they're going to be a powerhouse, which is kind of the whole point. But even then, if someone who has the literal control over the whole game can't think of something to challenge a paladin, or any of the classes for that matter, then it's not the player's fault, it's ours as the DM. A lot of the time, it's not an abuse of a wrong ruling or misunderstanding of a rule, and it's genuine strategy versus strategy that can be helped with some research. Very standard tactics and strategy can go miles in this game, and when you control what the scenario looks like, it's hard to not have an advantage in some way. DMs who can't handle the sneak attack damage of rogues or the multi-hit stun attempts of a monk, or in this case, Divine Smites, are, with no insult intended, not understanding the game well enough to handle these very sudden burst potentials. It's super hard to balance fun and good gameplay, which is why most of us prefer whatever makes the game enjoyable for our players and for us. Is your party tearing through your fights but they're loving it? Hey, that's perfect! You should enjoy letting them have fun, while you also get to play around with things on your end, of course. Maybe make some funny encounters, or just hit them with some Diablo-style waves of enemies and see how they do. Are they hating it or bored of always winning? That's okay too, because now it's time for the DM to pull out whatever fun toys they want to play with. You sometimes don't even need to use very powerful enemies to take down mighty warriors. Shout out to Tucker's Kobolds. Just good proper strategy or overwhelming the action economy works as well. Do the players want a risk of death or TPK, or do they feel like the main characters in a game and story? If they don't want to die, then it's simple to just give them the most easy encounters with a few hard but winnable ones. Do they want a risk of death or even hard encounters constantly? Time to research some tactics and look at enemy stat blocks in depth and think about their best uses. Now, for example, there was a post recently about how do you play a dragon optimally or smartly without ruining your melee party's experience. The answer to that is actually kind of simple. You have to not play optimally for that to work. A dragon that isn't being overly cocky or stupid, white dragons are often both, would have no reason to ever come down to the ground. It might take swipes, but it has no reason to land. So they'll have to either bring it down to the ground somehow, have ranged options, or figure out how to get themselves onto the sucker. But hey, that's how it goes in the adventuring biz. He is going to get even more frustrated when the party hits tier 3 and the spellcasters start absolutely wrecking house. I understand his frustration. Planning challenging encounters is hard, and it gets progressively harder as players level up and get more options. But there are ways around it that he should be researching rather than throwing out nerfs haphazardly. And just kept going on about how paladins are overpowered in 5th edition and need to be more like paladins in Baldur's Gate. But paladins in Baldur's Gate 3 can smite on every attack just like in base 5th edition. Heck, they're probably even more busted in Baldur's Gate 3 because there's ways to buff it even more. For example, half-orc savage attacks add extra dice to both the weapon and the smite damage on a crit in BG3, which I'm pretty sure it isn't how it is in base 5th edition. So yeah, DM doesn't even know what he's complaining about. You can only cast one spell a turn, and if it consumes a spell slot, it's a spell. He's wrong on both points, actually. He needs more encounters per long rest. Of course, if you have one major encounter per day and that's it, the Paladin's gonna steamroll that. Also, hold on. A single white? It's a CR3 creature, and he expects it to last more than a round against a party of level 6 PCs. If he was running it as per its 5th edition stat block and expecting to challenge you, no offense, or maybe all offense, he's a moron. No, I always laugh when DMs say their players are too strong. You can do anything as a DM. Nothing constrains you. You aren't the god of the universe. You are the universe. If Divine Smite is too strong, give the players tankier enemies to chew through. Make them really feel the value of their abilities. Stop crying that you don't know how to run the game. Go ask for advice. Learn how to run the campaign more effectively. Oh, I love it when players are strong because that means I get to use stronger enemies without ruining the experience for them. Oh, I love this one. This is so funny. Just the way it starts. Your DM sounds like shit. Sorry. I mean, there's so much wrong here. You can cast more than one spell on a turn. Divine Smite isn't a spell. Being able to kill an undead swiftly at the cost of 2 spell slots is pretty normal stuff for a paladin. Killing one white is not a big deal, nor should it ruin the plans that the DM had. And what's he talking about with Baldur's Gate? As far as I can tell, BG3 handles Smite largely the same way that 5th edition does. The solution is just so damn basic. All a DM needs to do to manage Paladin Smite power is to offer multiple encounters per day. As level 5 Paladin 1 Warlock, you have 6 spell slots and only one pack slot. You used a quarter of your daily magical capacity in a single round of combat. That is not a problem for any DM worth their dice. Paladins in BG3 are way more overpowered than standard 5th edition, along with every other class option, all because of the concessions to video gamification, which is not a bad thing. This is poor work by the DM, nothing more. You have to know your player's character's basic skill set. Of course, the Paladin is going to do ruinous things to undead, that's sorta natural. A level 6 Paladin should be able to body a wight. If they have an issue, throw in some tougher enemies, throw in more enemies, hell, just have more encounters per rest. There are balance issues in 5th edition, of course. Divine Smite really isn't one of them, though. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know down in the comments below what your advice is to any DM that struggles with anything that they consider OP, in this case, Divine Smite. We love you all, be safe, be happy, see you next time, bye for now.